I want to start with the breaking news on Capitol Hill now. Joining me now is Sunlen Serfaty with the very latest information. Sunlen, good evening to you. These text messages, there is one from Volker advising Zelensky's advisor, Yermak, on the morning of July 25th, 2019, ahead of a call between Trump and Zelensky.
That's right, Don, and certainly this is a significant moment. This document released from the House Intelligence Committee late this evening, or more than 25 pages of documents, text message back and forth. And first and foremost, this came from the testimony that Paul Volker, his deposition that he gave over 9 hours today behind closed doors up here on Capitol Hill. Volker, of course, being the president's former special envoy to the Ukraine. And one thing I want to highlight just before I get to this, it just going through these text messages, and again, our team is still going through them, it really underscores how much that the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, here was really enmeshed in U.S.-Ukrainian policy. The facts that the text show that Giuliani was involved in arranging that July 25th phone call between President Trump and the president of Ukraine when he, of course, urged that investigation into Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. They also shows that one big thing is that how cognizant the Ukrainians really were here, that they essentially wanted to, they knew the importance of this investigation to Giuliani and thus to President Trump. There was some reporting early in the day coming from small portions of these text message release that talked about how some U.S. diplomats were helpful in drafting part of a document to give to the Ukrainians talking about investigation. We now know, according to sources, though, that document was actually started by the Ukrainians. They were aware that the U.S. and President Trump wanted them to make a statement in some form about calling for an investigation, about cracking down on corruption, some back and forth between the U.S. and Ukraine. Again, the puzzle piece is just coming together of how extensive these conversations certainly were behind the scenes, Don.
I mean, listen, I'm just getting some of it, but I'm wondering what else you found interesting. I saw this one. This one says, you know, Kurt Volker, good, had breakfast with Rudy this morning, teeing up a call with Yermak Monday. Must have helped. Most important is for Zelensky to say that he will help investigation and address any specific personal issues, if there are any. I mean, you're right. It's interesting. I mean, what else stands out to you?
Yeah, one other thing that definitely stood out to me, I mean, there were just a slew of breakfast meetings, a slew of text messages, just how much energy was put into this around that July 25th phone call. In August, there was a slew of text messages changed, certainly the significance of the amount of those communications. But one other thing that really was interesting to me, and the committee really noted this when they released this tonight. They said that this reflects serious concerns raised by a State Department official about, they say, the detrimental effects of withholding critical military assistance from Ukraine. And there is a portion of this transcript where Bill Taylor, a top U.S. envoy, he expresses concerns about where this is all going, saying, I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for the help with a political campaign. So I think we will see a lot of Democrats, Dawn, in the coming days saying that this shows somewhat of a quid pro quo here, of course, which is at the center of their investigation.
So, Sunlen, go through these with me here. Let's go to page 5 if you have it there. I think you have it in front of you, and it's right sort of in the middle of the page where it says, Volker advises Yermak ahead of Trump-Zelensky call. And it says, on the morning of July 25, 2019, ahead of the planned call between President Trump and President Zelensky, Ambassador Volker advised Andrei Yermak. And this is at 7:25:19, 8:36:45 a.m. Kurt Volker, good lunch, thanks. Heard from White House, assuming President Z convinces Trump he will investigate / get to the bottom of what happened in 2016. We will nail down date for visit to Washington. Good luck. See you tomorrow, Kurt. So that's one.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, too, because you have there President Z, assuming President Z, the Ukrainian president there, convinces Trump he will investigate. And we've talked a lot about in recent days, and certainly Democrats have been worried that, you know, a meeting between the two of them would have been contingent on the Ukrainian president promising that he will investigate. So reading through those lines there on that text message chain, ahead of that call. Certainly important there, Don.
Okay, here's another one. This one's on page 4, okay, and it's towards the bottom of the page, and it says, concerns about Ukraine becoming an instrument in U.S. politics. On July 21st, 2019, Ambassador Taylor flagged President Zelensky's desire for Ukraine not to be used by the Trump administration for its own domestic political purposes. 7/21/19, 1:45:54 a.m., Bill Taylor. Gordon, one thing Kurt and I talked about yesterday was Sasha Danieluk. Point that President Zelensky is sensitive about Ukraine being taken seriously, not merely as an instrument in Washington domestic re-election politics. And then again at 4:45, the response, 44, it says, Gordon Sunlen, this is Gordon Sunlen, absolutely, but we need to get the conversation started and the relationship built, irrespective of the pretext. I am worried about the alternative. And then there is another one. Go on. Do you want to discuss that one? And then there's another one I want to discuss with you.
I think this just like paints again a picture of how aware everyone was of these demands that were being put on Ukraine, this ask being put of Ukraine, and how eager the Ukrainians in their communications and how the U.S. officials in their communications acknowledged that that was certainly something that was floating in the ether, and certainly important that they were aware and wanted to not only make Rudy Giuliani happy, but potentially President Trump as well.
Okay, and then this one is on page 8, Sunlen, towards the bottom of the page, and it says, on September 1, Ambassador Taylor sought clarification of the requirements for a White House visit. 9/1/19, 12:08:57 p.m. Bill Taylor, are you now saying that security assistance and White House meeting are conditioned on investigations? And then at 12:42:29, it's Gordon Sunlen, call me.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot to be revealed from these short messages. And I, again, think that this underscores what a lot of Democrats have been raising, that there was some sense that this meeting between President Trump, bilateral between President Trump and the Ukrainian president, was somewhat contingent on them agreeing that it would be conditioned on launching an investigation, making some sort of statement. And that's why, to go back to the first part of our conversation, this drafting of this document for potentially the Ukrainian president to read at some point who started that document and who was involved in, editing the document is so important. Now, there was early reporting that this started with the U.S., but now we know, according to a source familiar, they say that the Ukrainians started drafting that document, talking in general terms about corruption and investigation, not mentioning the Biden. This source tells CNN, though, that that draft was given to Kurt Volker, and Volker showed it to Giuliani, and Giuliani essentially said it didn't go far enough, that it had to specifically mention the Bidens and the energy company that Hunter Biden was part of. So again, this back and forth, this piecing together of these conversations and these text messages, again, shows how much importance was put on these demands that were very clearly expressed in many of these text messages.
Sunlen Serfaty going through, again, these text messages are just in. Sunlen just got them. I just got them. We're reading through them in real time here. So, Sunlen, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
So joining me now is Congressman Eric Swalwell, who sits on the Intelligence Committee. Congressman, I really appreciate your time. I know it's been a long day for you. 9 hours of testimony from Volker. What did you learn?
Good evening, Don. We learned that there's been an ongoing shadow shakedown by Rudy Giuliani, it looks like at the direction of Donald Trump, to have the Ukrainians investigate and exonerate the Russians for their role in the 2016 election, and also to investigate the Biden family in exchange for security assistance from the U.S. to Ukraine.
What evidence did Volker provide to back up his testimony?
Voluminous amounts of text messages and different emails and exchanges that he had with other State Department officials. And again, we're going to hear from these officials going forward, but we have the best evidence yet that there was an ongoing scheme, as the whistleblower described, to quote unquote play ball, to have the Ukrainians play ball with the president's request to investigate the Bidens and exonerate Russia.
Well, let's talk about this, because CNN is reporting that Volker told Giuliani not to trust the Ukrainians who were giving him dirt on the Bidens, that they were corrupt themselves. Did he testify to that?
Yeah, Don, I can say this. Rudy Giuliani had all the evidence in the world to not believe any of the misinformation about the Bidens. That was made clear to him. He proceeded anyway. What's kind of frustrating, I imagine, for Ambassador Volker is that he's a career diplomat who is working for free, especially as a special envoy, and you have this rogue emissary of the president who's running a second shadow track with the Ukrainians. And we have evidence now that there were other State Department officials who were concerned about Mr. Giuliani's his own engagement with the Ukrainians, and one who went as far to say that it's crazy that the United States would condition security assistance in exchange for help in a political campaign.